So we will call the meeting to order, and the first thing on our agenda is roll call.
Cynthia Hoyle,
I'm here.
Annie Adams,
I'm here.
Kara Dudek,
Here.
Audrey Ishii, Susan Jones,
Present.
Jeff Marino, Craig Schonkweiler,
Here.
Lily Wilcock.
Here.
Do we have a declaration of a quorum? All right. We're good to go. Thank you for coming tonight, everybody. I appreciate your taking the time to be here. And the next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. So do I hear a motion to approve? Well,
So
shaking
moved.
heads won't work. Yes, you have to say something.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right. Next, we have approval of minutes from previous meetings. Did you all have a chance to take a look at the minutes? We got them plenty of time in advance. Are there any changes, corrections?
I didn't see
Nope.
anything.
Okay, so we need a motion for approval.
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I second that.
All right. So we have a motion and a second, and all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, all right. Next, we have public input. Well, I guess that was it. Space aliens are listening in. We'll move on to unfinished business. And under this, we have Bradley Avenue bike lanes from Craig Schonkweiler.
Well, I wanted to give you all an update on where we're at with that. We thought we could get this striped this year. The lone striping contractor is Varsity Striping. They're really the ones that do everything I-80, south of I-80 in the state of Illinois. They thought they could get it in. Now they're talking mid-November. It's not the best time weather-wise to be able to get that in this year. So we're looking to move it to spring. They're telling me that if we do it at this time, weather's not the best. It's probably not going to last that well through the winter period.
Right.
The other thing, I'm finding out that the green-backed bicycle lane markings are cost prohibitive. They're real expensive. So expensive that it really takes away from the rest of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So when you weigh out, the cost of those versus, say, striping or restriping what we have, we'll probably stick with just restriping what we have.
Yeah, I'd rather have maintained what we have than,
It's not the color paint, it's just the amount of paint, right?
Well, it's the product. It's it's a special type of preformed product that
otherwise
is,
it would be wet, like
yeah,
dangerous.
right. So it's cost prohibitive because you're talking, there is a supply issue when you have only like 9 of them on the project. If we had hundreds of them, that becomes, you get economies of scale there.
But it's still included in the MCOR project.
Yeah, the difference there is, of course, we have a grant. I mean,
It's not taking away from.
right,
Good.
this is solely 100% studied. I mean, we try to be, on MCOR, you're still trying to be cost effective. You're just, the difference there is the volume. I mean, it's a $40-some million job.
Right.
So the volume's significantly greater than just what we're doing on Bradley. So,
Plus, I think that the green lane is more critical in high density locations where we've got a lot of bicyclists and a lot of pedestrians. So I think as we move forward, maybe we ought to contemplate where we think it would be important to budget to have that included, places where we feel that there's a potential for high conflict.
right.
And Bradley isn't really, at this point, one that I think that's going to happen, because I don't think we're going to have hundreds of cyclists there every day, whereas on Green Street we will.
And I don't know how much these things cost, but like flexi posts or anything, is that not useful?
I'm not familiar. You were talking like, say, delineators that flap type
The
of
bollards that are, yeah.
Well,
They're
there's
plastic, yeah, you put down the metal and then you put the piece of plastic in it and
Yeah, there becomes a snowplow issue with, we try to actually maintain our bicycle lanes with the same equipment if we can, that we plow our regular roads. That way we get them clear. If we put those in, then we have to, it can be done, it's just now it slows the whole process down.
I have seen Chicago plows go right over them.
Right.
I'm sure there
Right.
was no intent of destroying those. I'm
Right.
sure they were
Right.
totally, no, I'm seriously just kidding. Like,
Right.
I do think the plows were trying to destroy them, but
Right.
yeah. they were-
Right.
But yeah, I was curious, yeah.
I think we would reserve those just like the green, where we had, say, a conflict, high conflict
Yes.
area.
Mhm.
So, and then I wanted to also let the commission know that I took this plan to the Traffic Commission, and we have approved the no parking restrictions that come
Good.
along with this project, and that will be going to the Committee of the Whole here in the next week or so or two. So we want to get those no parking restrictions in place at select areas, but also along where the bike lanes are too. So I want to let the commission know about the status of the project.
Well, I appreciate you trying for the green. I think it would have made a big difference, so
Yeah,
I appreciate you putting it on the
Nice.
table.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it would've been
Craig,
nice.
could you clarify what the no parking restrictions are? Would that just be
well-
like not during church times and such, or?
No, it'd be any time. So we would actually, these would be not where these would be, say, where there's sight triangle restrictions at the intersections. They would also be, though, along, say, from Goodwin to Lincoln, it would be on both sides of the road at all times. So we wouldn't want anybody to park where we have a bike lane.
Yep.
So, I know that the commission, we've talked a little bit about that, parking in bike lanes, but that's actually one of the measures that we in Urbana do, is if we have a bike lane, we would go ahead and we make an ordinance, and the council has backed that ordinance to actually restrict parking in bike lanes.
And these are gonna be, have some left buffering,
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
Yeah, they'll actually have 6 foot of buffering. Yeah.
I, some of the people here saw that I have been contemplating why Urbana didn't make the list of the top 50 bicycling cities in the country that Bicycling Magazine did, because quite a number of the cities that are on there I've been to and bicycled in, and they're nowhere near as bicycle friendly as we are. And so I looked at the criteria that they listed, and they, I think, clearly had more criteria, but it wasn't available. But the things that they looked at were the number of bicycle-friendly businesses, which is something that we could easily work on, that I wanted to have happen more often. And 2 was infrastructure, and in particular buffered and separated infrastructure, cycle tracks, that sort of thing, which we don't really have much of. And I was trying to remember what else there was, but those were the 2 I thought we could actually do something about. And so I'm interested in those locations where I think it will make people more comfortable for us to seriously look at that design and make sure that we incorporate it where it'll be helpful. Yes.
Who was the organization?
Bicycling Magazine.
Okay.
They're not experts on this necessarily. However, Chicago was recognized as the #1 bicycling city in America. And so it was an interesting discussion, but I think it's because they've installed 100 miles of bicycle infrastructure. They put in the 606. It's a converted railway line, former railway line, and several other factors. One of the other factors they look at is the number of women who are bicycle commuters. So, and it's also interesting because sometimes we get lumped into the metro area instead of standing alone. And so then that changes our bicycle commute rate and a number of other things. But I think they looked at individual cities in this because they ranked Minneapolis and St. Paul separately. Minneapolis also was in the top 10. So it was interesting to take a look at that. There was a lot of discussion in the bicycling world yesterday and today when this came out, and they had a big ceremony in Chicago today. The guy was there and presented it. So it's nice they got recognition for the work they've done, but I don't think anybody would suggest that bicycling there is better than here overall. I think it's easier to bicycle here, and I think we have a higher bicycle commute rate in Urbana as well. So there are a number of those listings I see that we're not included on that I wonder how they missed us if they look at the census data, because we're in the top 10 in the census data of communities this size in the country in terms of our bicycle commuter rate.
Cynthia, did they have any communities of our size on that list? Okay.
They did. With 50, they had places like Gainesville, and there were some really small places that I was kind of boggled by. They had, of course, Davis is going to be in there, and places like that. So that was one of the things I thought is maybe it's just bigger places. And in fact, the author did say something in the Streets blog article about they want to recognize the major metropolitan areas. So there clearly is a focus on bigger areas, but that wasn't all they had, because we don't have 50 giant metro areas that they could rank that easily here. If you do that, you're going to be putting in communities that really are not bicycle friendly. I did wonder, though, how much emphasis they gave to crashes and fatality rates, because that wasn't mentioned, and it seemed to me that that ought to be a key part of the analysis. And we've been doing well on that in the last few years. Cross my fingers that continues. So that was a little bit of a sidetrack on this discussion, but I thought about that today I thought about it today, and then when it came up about our bike lanes on Bradley, I knew we had discussed it that way. Did you have something, Annie, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I looked at it, and as a person who's recently biked in Chicago for years and years, I, of course, read with great interest about Chicago being number one. And they mentioned the fact that they can't just choose Minneapolis and Portland every year. And and they said maybe, and they kind of came to the conclusion that maybe they chose Chicago because of the aggressive infrastructure, because of the aggressive, paint on the ground and the
Bike share.
The bike, well, there's bike share, there's the just because of the aggressive push, and they want to try to give, and this is something we can talk about when we talk about the bike summit, was what IDOT said was basically the politics of it, and they just felt like, they said they felt like Chicago, it's coming from the top, it's coming from the mayor is wanting this. And again, in Minneapolis, I don't know if any of you know about the mayor of Minneapolis, who said, I want to grow the city by 500,000, but I don't want to add 500,000 more cars. And people are flocking to that city for a variety of reasons, including that. And so I think it's like a mixture of both, in that they want to encourage and give this ranking to a new city other than Portland and Minneapolis. And then they also are trying to include in the metrics people who are, they want to give political cover. But that was just sort of my feeling on it, because biking in that city is nowhere near as wonderful as biking in this city. I mean, nowhere near. I mean, people drive really well here, and that's something I would love to discuss someday, how we continue to have people drive nice here. I don't know. I don't know why, but it's really nice.
That's not going to be on their algorithm for ranking the towns either.
But it could in terms of crashes and fatalities.
But but that's what I don't think we should, look at everybody who ranks things and try to fit their algorithm.
No, no, of course
we
not.
don't. That's just.
But I'd like for us to get recognized more often than we are.
Yeah.
It's important to tell the narrative of Urbana, and it's important to tell the narrative of Urbana as a very bikeable, walkable. That we have actually a very great bus system. We have a great bike infrastructure, because these are the cities that we want to retain residents, and we not only want to retain residents, we want to grow as a city. And the only way we're going to do that is if we start telling that narrative. And it's great that we already have it, but we need to continue to promote ourselves, and that's what these things do. And then people have pride of place, and they're like, well, I will stay here because this is a nice up-and-coming city.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I can tell you that after having bicycled in Paris this summer, the first morning I got back, I was totally thrilled to bicycle to the market on Saturday morning with that feeling I was going to be run over and killed. It was a sincere pleasure to be back in Urbana. We don't have some of the other things Ferris has, but it's much easier to bicycle here. So unless anybody else wants to add anything, we can move on to new business, our next agenda item. And what we have tonight, we have a guest with us. We have Gabe Lewis from the Regional Planning Commission. He's going to tell us about the Prairie Campus Safe Routes to School plan. This is a plan that we started 2 years or 3 years ago.
Beginning of 2014.
Okay.
So I guess it's going on 3, but
2.5.
2.5.
That we used our not this Safe Routes to School grant that we just finished, but the previous one. We contracted with them to do a plan for that school. They have a very high percentage of students who walk to school and a fairly busy road with Washington in front. So we've been working with them, and public comment is still open.
Yes.
All right.
Saturday.
All right. Well, I will let you take it away then. And your official title is Gabe.
Transportation planner.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Gabe Lewis, transportation planner with the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. Thanks for having me tonight. I'll be talking about our Prairie Campus Safe Routes to School plan and where exactly, well, we'll talk about the location. I'll skip ahead just to show you, this is East Urbana on Washington Street. We're talking about Dr. Williams School and the Urbana Early Childhood School. The CU Safe Routes to School project hired us to do a Safe Routes plan for Dr. Williams School, which was Prairie Elementary School when we started this process. So we've changed the name from Prairie Safe Routes to School to plan to the Prairie Campus because the area got renamed. Like Cynthia said, we used IDOT Safe Routes to School funding for this. Yes.
Gabe, just to ask a quick question here. I don't think when we started this plan they'd even made a decision to put the Early Childhood Center out there, had they? So that happened, and it's benefiting that, but that we didn't do it with that in mind because I don't think they've made the decision yet.
Actually, the school had just opened, but
It had just opened when we started?
they opened in fall of 2013. So,
Okay.
but we weren't, this wasn't totally, it kind of factors into some of the planning that you'll see, traffic circulation, but
That's right. I
we didn't
remember
look
now.
at that school
Okay.
a whole lot. So we've been doing school traffic studies and safe walking route maps for decades now, a little while. We've done some safe routes to school plans in Champaign. So this is the first one in Urbana, which is exciting. We've approved 2 in Champaign, and a third one is in progress, being approved. So if you're not familiar, we look at the 5E approach, which is engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation.
How were the plans in Champaign paid for, Gabe?
The city of Champaign actually approached us and paid for the first 2. They had concerns similar to what you said, that with the schools that are located on arterial streets with heavy traffic, they wanted to see if they could improve, how they could improve walking and bicycling in those neighborhoods. I will say too, the plan that's in progress right now is for Southside Elementary. That was, there was some public health funding access for that. We Choose Health, which has gone away. The city of Champaign kicked in a little bit of money, but it was mostly the public health funding. So like I mentioned, we're looking at this area at Washington Street and Kent Street between Kent and Smith. When the early childhood school opened, well, actually, it was after that. With the renaming of the elementary school for Dr. Preston Williams, the campus itself was renamed Prairie Campus to kind of keep that familiarity and history within the neighborhood. And that's really what we're looking at geographically, at least. But the focus of the plan in terms of the students is Dr. Williams Elementary. And so this is our study area, which is actually the walking boundary and attendance boundary for the elementary school. For existing conditions, we did an analysis of a number of things: traffic conditions, land use, socioeconomic, crash data, crime data, school district policy in terms of health, how much activity kids get during the day, and then we did surveys. We used survey data that we had, and we did some surveys. In terms of mode share, how kids get to school, the family vehicle was still at the top with 35%, but walking was close behind at 28%. And for some perspective, in Champaign, the highest walking mode share to school is maybe 10%. It's usually 10, give or take. 25% of kids came on a school bus, 9% biked, which is also really high, and then 3% carpooled. And this map shows median household income for Urbana census tracts, which does cover a lot of area, but we just wanted to show that the study area and the Dr. Williams Prairie campus area is the two lowest groups of median household income. So we are dealing with a lot of low-income families, kids that may be walking out of necessity rather than by choice or in addition to choice. We looked at home-to-school distances. Again, in Urbana, this was a lot, I don't want to say easier to look at, but you definitely have that evidence that we have the neighborhood schools and kids live, the majority of the school children live close to schools, so that's really beneficial for encouraging walking and enabling walking and bicycling. Within the study area, we got about 8% of kids who live within a quarter mile of the school, almost 40% who live between a quarter and half mile, and another 22% that live a half to a mile away. So that's 68% that live within a mile and within the study area. So we do have some good mode share, but it could be improved and increased even more. This shows the existing pedestrian facilities. So if you can see, I don't know if this is gonna, near the school, south of the school, we have sidewalks. The little dots are ramps. That information we actually have from our sidewalk inventory of the whole community. But this just shows whether or not a ramp exists, and then if it has truncated domes. But in the Country Squire neighborhoods,
What's a ramp?
a ramp at an intersection, like a sidewalk ramp.
The thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Whether,
making sure.
yeah. In some places, sure, yeah. And in some places, not as much in this neighborhood, but a sidewalk will get to a road and it not have any ramp at all. So anyway, so southwest of the school, when that part of Country Squire was developed, there are no sidewalks. Further west, that area has sidewalks in the Learman neighborhood. And then in the Scottswood neighborhood to the east of the school, there are no sidewalks, and that's outside of the city limits, so that's definitely a challenge. But parts of Scottswood subdivision do have sidewalks, which is good for those students. Existing bike facilities, this is doing pretty well in the study area. Bike lanes on Washington and Kinch, Maine, when you go further up. Not necessarily something all kids are going to use, but as they get older and they learn how to bike, and as they progress on to middle school, this is important that they have bike facilities to middle school down Washington Street. I think I'm going to go on to the next one. Yeah. So then traffic circulation. We look at, the focus is bicycling and walking. We do look at traffic circulation around the school to see how kids are walking and biking to the school itself. And when we started this plan at the beginning of 2014, the family vehicles were being shuttled in through Kent Street, the north end of Kent Street, into the circle kind of drive, the parking lot on the west side of Dr. Williams. And then the school buses were on the south side. But like I said, this school was not built until the beginning of the 2013-14 school year. So this driveway was not as long as it is now. The school district actually had in mind, and we kind of looked at it with this plan, to flip these two. And the parents were opposed because they've been opposed to this. It's been proposed before, and it's been proposed and they were opposed. But there was not as long of, I guess, circle drive for the Dr. Williams UECS. But with the longer drive, they did flip this in the fall of 14, and we really haven't heard any complaints or had any issues since then. It's actually worked out pretty nicely. It also gets cars off of Washington Street who were idling on Washington Street, and then with the bike lanes installed, that's even worse. So that was a positive from this planning process. Okay. So we developed 2 goals, and we have some objectives, basically to cover the infrastructure and non-infrastructure side of this. On the engineering side, we basically said to increase safe walking and bicycling routes within the study area, and then on the encouragement side, to hold activities at the school to encourage walking and bicycling. And the school has done that. Having this in a plan definitely institutionalizes it, has something we can point to keep the school on top of it. We have the SMART objectives, which is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, and then performance measures to track that, strategies for achieving that, responsible parties that can help with that. And then we developed recommendations. So we did actually update these or create these. We had an open house in May of 2014 with the PTA. They had a meeting. We coincided with their meeting so that they could give input. We also coincided and held the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee meeting at the school to get their input, and then any other parents who wanted to. We've tweaked a few of these things since then, but everything is still what, essentially what they were voting on. So we have recommendations in the 5 E's, as you can see. We created a map that shows where all the engineering recommendations are, and I'll go over some of these. There are actually a lot of engineering recommendations for this plan, and part of that reason, besides the opportunities that are there, is because at the beginning of this plan process, we also applied for a Safe Routes to School grant. That was the last cycle, I believe, that was open. Yeah. So the project we proposed was widening the sidewalk on Washington Street. The ultimate goal is to widen it not only in front of the school, but all the way down to Learman Avenue. You don't have a lot of breaks. It's next to a park. It's a good opportunity to widen that sidewalk for kids walking to school and bicycling. So this is just a rendering showing what's existing on the left and proposed on the right. And even the ramps that I think were installed by the school district, they've allowed room to expand that sidewalk. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, but we do have this as a recommendation in the plan and one of many potential projects that could be applied for in the next round.
Gabe, can I ask just sort of an aesthetic question?
Yeah.
I suspect this has nothing to do with you, but when I go through this area, it's super hot because there are no trees, there's no coverage, and so making it into a more interesting place to walk or move through would involve trees. Would be a simple thing. I assume this is something you have nothing to do with, but I just thought I would just bring that up. Like, I don't know how, because obviously you wouldn't want to have the city arborist come in and put in trees, and then you all be like,
yeah, we
were going to rip that up and put in
Yeah.
some sidewalks.
Sure.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to. I assume you have nothing to do with this.
So what I can say is between Learman Avenue and Dodson Drive, almost, the landowners would be Champaign County, Urbana Park District, and Urbana School District. I'm sure if there's a sidewalk widening project, they would be, the city was the lead applicant on the grant application since it involves the street. But, I can share that comment with those agencies. I don't anticipate that anyone's going to put in trees right away or anything, but even if they did, my guess, and Craig's welcome to chime in, that they wouldn't be doing that within the right of way of, where we want to widen the sidewalk.
I'll just say, too, that perhaps is an opportunity for recommendations regarding streetscaping that we don't necessarily need to include in this plan. I don't think I would want to go back and try to add that in, but I think we could say that when and if there is funding available to widen the sidewalk, that the city consider including streetscaping and partnering with the county and the park district so that we have a consistent plan for that stretch. And I think it's a really good idea, and it might improve our chances of getting a grant if we included that in there as part of it and somehow made it, maybe talked about rain gardens and sustainability and other things that we could also incorporate with the kids as some sort of a learning activity. That's one of the things I think was Stratton that helped us. When we asked for the widening for the sidewalk to go up to the public health district, we talked about the kids being able to walk to the public health district to participate in the community gardening projects there. And so they like that kind of interagency cooperation and opportunities for the students to then have additional learning activities as part of it. So I think that's not a bad thought for us to keep in mind.
Yeah. I had a few slides. This will come up. I have it. But Weaver Park to the north of the school too, since that's undeveloped. With other plans and with Urbana Park District's plans, they have a plan for a trail there. But we included that here not only because it's in the study area, but also an opportunity for environmental education. It may not be the way kids are getting to school, but it's still beneficial. All right. Sidewalk installation was a recommendation we had in a couple places, like I talked about before. In the Country Squire subdivision, this is just a Rainbow View Drive south of Washington, what it could look like if a sidewalk was installed. Obviously, you've got something like existing trees to consider and other issues. But like I said, just an idea of what it could look like. And then sidewalk installation in the Scottswood subdivision. This is Dodson Drive going north of Washington. The existing photo is not doctored. There are kids walking in the street because there are no sidewalks. And we kind of moved them over to the sidewalk on the right that we built, which we put on both sides, but, it's safer there. In the Learman neighborhood, there's a lot of talk about redevelopment in that area, and neighbors also wanting to see a paved path that connects them to Philo Road and the businesses there. And this would, again, benefit kids traveling to the middle school and high school who could access Fairlawn Drive. So this is one of the recommendations that actually kind of includes middle and high school students too. Baker's Lane Trail, this is the east side of the Prairie Campus, Urbana Early Childhood, west of Dodson Drive. We have the city right-of-way that is undeveloped and, could be a place for a trail, and perhaps a facility for the Scottswood neighborhood that's within city boundaries that could be a grant that is something the city could do for an area that's out of the city. We have a couple transit kind of improvements to Kinch and Easy Street. This is a block south of the school. We actually, this existing picture doesn't show it, but we found in our inventory and visits that we had middle school kids waiting at some of the bus stops, and we know that from surveys, the middle school kids will take their younger siblings to Dr. Williams and then have to get to the middle school and high school themselves. So there's advantages to providing, the bus stops where they have to go to after they go to the school, Concrete Landing. And then similar idea at Washington and Dodson, where we have the sidewalk on Washington, nothing on Dodson, kind of out of the city limits, but a potential for a bus stop. Covered bike parking. So the bike parking itself has been upgraded, I believe, at all of probably all of the Urbana 116 schools.
Yeah, some of that was the city Safe Routes to School grant, and then what they didn't cover, then the public health grant, I believe, covered. So I think all of our schools now have bike parking that meets guidelines for at least some of the bicycling. I know at Lille they're using all of their bike racks, including their old hair comb ones, because they have so many kids bicycling, but they've got a lot of the U racks. And I know the health district did a lot of offering and installing locations where it was needed.
Yeah. So our next phase, the next step we have is to have covered bike parking. That's the recommendation to strive for, to protect kids. Which actually, on that note, on a side note, I have bike seat covers for everyone. Separate project, we're developing a bike tracking app called Bike Moves Illinois, and the benefit is people who use it, we're piloting it in Champaign-Urbana, and we want it's an IDOT funded project, so they want us to roll it out for the whole state eventually.
Why don't you describe that to us in further detail under announcements and bring that up and we can have it on camera so
Will do. A couple more engineering recommendations. Washington and Smith, a stop for pedestrian sign installation. We do have a crossing guard there, but it's not an all-way stop, and a little something to improve that.
We bought them a sign with our grant before we closed it out.
Oh, excellent.
It's not out there, but I think there's concern, this median doesn't have anything in it. The one that they've got down on Kinch, there's a pole behind it.
Oh, okay.
And so we might want to, maybe they should talk to you about how we could put it in there so that it has a little more likelihood of not being run over. And so I don't know what the answer is there, but I think we could take a look at it.
Yeah, just maybe. So you've said they bought the sign?
Safe Routes to School bought the sign for them.
Okay.
But they have the sign. I just haven't seen it out there yet. I don't know whether it's not assembled, but I think there's going to also be concern about its durability, even though they have one out in front of the middle school. Of course, they're on their second one there. The first one got pretty beaten up from being run over.
Okay.
And they do move it back and forth, I think.
Do they? Okay. Who was your contact over at the school district?
It was Carol Baker
Okay.
is who I communicated with, and because they took over, as you know, paying for crossing guards, and so we asked them if there was any equipment they needed, and the city had given them most of the equipment, but we did provide them with a few more safety vests for crossing guards because they had, the vests just disappear. So
Okay. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get a hold of, I know Carol, so I'll get a hold of Carol and see what we can do and talk further with Gabe maybe next week about this proposal too.
Okay.
So.
we're already implementing, and it's not even been approved yet.
Yeah. It's a good sign.
Is there ever any discussion of raised pedestrian crosswalks? Because I saw a presentation yesterday that they're like $2,000 to $3,000 for a couple of them. Now, again, it's maybe scale, but it just seems like it might be cheaper than a cross guard, and cars would slow down before going over it. And I do know those stop for pedestrian signs. Again, I've seen them run over, hit, everything else. No, I'm not against. I'm totally for them. I'm just saying, like, is there any ever discussion of a raised pedestrian crosswalk of any kind? That's all.
I would probably defer to Craig, but I know that the street was just reconstructed in 2012, I think. 2013.
I think we're open to all new types of improvements. There was a raised, I guess it was called raised intersection at 6th and John in Champaign on campus. It went in, it lasted, I don't know, maybe less than 10 years, and it came back out. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't pursue that here, but again, there's a capital issue with that. But the first thing we always do is we try to assess how many are using the crosswalk, and then what improvements can we do signage-wise, maybe roadway lighting-wise to improve the visibility. There are other measures like, maybe rectangular rapid flashing beacons that are a lot more alert to alert the motorist. We recently did a speed study along Washington to see what the speeds are. I'm going to be combing through that data soon, and then we ask for enforcement, to lower anytime you can lower the vehicle speeds, that helps. But I think the raised pedestrian crosswalk would tie in more with, say, our look at traffic calming, which is something that we've had on our wish list to look into.
I think that that's absolutely something we'll be looking at in the pedestrian plan. I think that is the time for us to take a look at what criteria, sort of like for bus stops, we have different levels of facilities based on number of people, a variety of other factors, and I think we probably ought to set something like that up for our pedestrian facilities. And if you look at volume and crashes and types of users, et cetera. I can think of a couple of places I think it'd be interesting to take a look at doing that. For example, on Vine by the middle school.
That one I'm actually looking at the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at this point. So, I mean, we're aware of that location. Yeah.
Getting the students to push the button.
Well, and you can do active or passive, so you can actually have it set to where they don't. The only problem with the passive is it sometimes it lulls people into. You actually want the active sometimes to be able to initiate the response versus getting lulled into thinking that it's going to be, and then maybe a child is outside of that boundary where the detection is, and they shoot across the street. So.
I emailed earlier this week or last week, I emailed Lily and Cynthia about a woman who I was dismounted my bike and I was slowly trying to cross in the crosswalk that had the giant stop for pedestrians, and it's on Lincoln at Iowa. And the woman, it was hilarious. I mean, I'm an adult, so it was hilarious. If I was a child, it would not have been hilarious. But she like drove by me like this. She goes, no, no, no. And I was like, you're breaking the law. And this other poor guy was waiting patiently, for someone to stop, for a break in traffic. And so it just creates this like unfair environment where it's like the people who stop their car and wait are stuck waiting for someone on the other side to stop and wait, instead of if everybody just has to slowly go over the speed bump or whatever you put in there. It just creates this like kind of slowed down ecosystem. But I understand all the restrictions. And I also think this is another reason why you want to be on those pedestrian or bicycling cities, number one city stuff, because you want to be a leader and you want to go to these things and show people what you're doing, and it's just very helpful. That's all.
Okay, thanks. So continuing on Washington Street a little further east, there's a bridge and a separate pedestrian bridge, and we have a proposal to improve that. We actually, because of this process, it came to the city's attention of kind of the deficiency of the sidewalk bridge. We've had a lot of parents complain about it. So there was an improvement done in terms of leveling the approach to the bridge, I believe. And then something, we have the rendering here that would include bike lanes, but kind of all this would have to be a separate like reconstruction project. But we at least did hear from parents who were able to address something, which was good. So those are the engineering recommendations, and then on the other side, non-infrastructure, there's plenty that everyone else is able to work on, not just Public Works. There's opportunities that everyone can approach, not trying to pick on any one group.
But Gabe, that's really not bad. Like what you just showed there, I mean, that's kind of exciting because that's
Good.
really not too much stuff. I
Good.
mean,
Well, there was more.
yeah. But still.
Yeah. So with education, of course, we have our bike rodeos. The picture on the top is actually the one that we held across the street from Dr. Williams a week ago Saturday, which was great to have something in the neighborhood with the Cub Scouts. So we have not only to encourage coming to the rodeos that we have at the market, but also being able to hold one at the school if and when possible. Parent letter, and some of these things had actually been kind of implemented with this plan process, and we've worked with the principal. We have a steering committee. So she's done a parent letter, at the beginning of the school year to remind parents how to behave in school zones, to follow the rules, to keep kids safe on whatever mode they're coming. A bike safety town, this is the picture on the bottom, is actually a project that came about really this year. It was presented at the Illinois Bike Summit last year. That's in Peoria and has been in existence for 50 years. So nothing that we're like, we just missed the boat or something. But we have a lot of people kind of at the table that have been interested in this. And it's basically kind of a permanent bike rodeo station, if I can be really general about it, a place that everyone in the community can come and practice or learn their bicycling skills and have it be kind of a closed-off, safe site. We, on a side note, have some university students, urban planning, who are working on some conceptual designs for us this semester, so that's exciting. Traffic circulation map creation and annual distribution kind of goes with working with the principal. Bike to School Day safety event, which could go within School Bike Rodeo in May, and then the Risk Watch curriculum that is in place. Encouragement, snow removal. I know that, I think it came through BPAC, there's this kind of snow removal working committee, and we have the yard signs to encourage snow removal, but continuing that in the neighborhood and working with the church. Frequent walker club idea, that's the bottom picture, that can be something the school can implement, that they reward kids for walking to school and also at school, so that it includes all kids, and there can be some kind of prize they receive when they achieve a certain milestone. Park and Walk site, that's actually the top picture, that came about with this process in the fall of 2014. They had these yard signs that they placed that said to park and walk, please use the church parking lot. We have, we saw some parents doing that. We had signs directing people to cross at Washington and Kinch so that they are crossing with the crossing guard at a all-way stop to be safe. So that was really good that the school was on board with that. Walking school buses. This was also implemented in the fall of 2014. If you're familiar, it began with Leal School in the spring of 14 while we were doing this process. And so we were excited it was happening at Dr. Williams, but it has since stopped due to lack of volunteers, but not lack of interest from families. So I know we're trying to work with anybody who, we can kind of grasp who might have some time or interest. I know that the school's further away from campus, so it may not be something university students are able to do or as interested in doing, but with the Learman Neighborhood Group, there's a relationship with McKinley Church on campus, and they had a volunteer fair this weekend, and it was a little too late to try to get this request in there, but it also sounds like there was a little bit of over-programming with volunteer opportunities, a little too much, but we did make a contact to see if we can try to pursue this in the future, to have somebody there help us and see if anybody's interested.
How do they work?
The walking school buses. Urbana School District has hired a coordinator, and he works with the adult volunteers to get routes set up. So once you kind of match up which families are interested, then the routes are created to the school, and then they have an adult come that is there at a certain time to pick up kids to walk to school.
We do have them operating at Leal, and Adam, who is the coordinator, goes to events where he talks to the parents. He sets up a table at various events and gets them to sign their children up, and then he creates the routes based on who is signed up and how many volunteers he has. And then he also has activities for them to do along the routes on the way to school. We do it for 6 to 8 weeks. We did it based on when we have good weather, and so they enjoy doing it a lot. It's a lot of fun, and there was very high demand at Prairie, and the class that did it, it was a class who did it that first time around, and they really got a lot out of it. So I think it's an opportunity for us to continue making that connection between town and gown if we can make the right connections and create sort of an ongoing program there for the kids, because there are so many kids walking by themselves at Dr. Williams, it would be nice if we could get that rolling again. But we literally just did not have enough volunteers to do it. And Adam has knocked himself out. He's contacted almost every campus entity available. Not to say that if people have contacts, they shouldn't let us know, but he really did beat the bushes recruiting volunteers. We did not go to community groups. That's another option. But based on other programs, college students are really one of the best sources for volunteers for this, believe it or not. And parents are not. They're too busy. We might get some retired folks, but students have really been a big part of these programs other places.
Has anyone ever tried organizing the adult student, the older students? Like, I mean, when I was a kid, I was a crossing guard, and you know, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that's, you know, something that can be done middle or high school students, but I don't think that's been implemented here. Adam would probably be the best person to talk to about that, because I don't know if the school district wants to formally do that, or
The
I'm
high
not
school
sure.
starts much before.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
so
It starts. Yeah, I think
I was
at
going
8
to talk
o'clock.
about that. I'm going to give an update on our snow removal program later. I'll fill you in a little bit on that.
And just to kind of throw in with my work with the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee, that section, the western part of the study area, has emptied out. You know, we've been in existence since 2009 and have a community garden and do cleanup days, and we used to have a lot more volunteers in the neighborhood, and now with units vacant and torn down, we don't even have a high population there anymore. So we've had issues, you know, difficulties trying to get volunteers within the neighborhood, even though people care about the neighborhood. It's just the population's dwindled. So it's another factor, I think. So some other encouragement activities, things that we have going on or that we're already doing: Bike to School Day and Walk to School Day. The CATCH program is, if there's funds to restart it, is a recommendation. It's a public health program that CATCH stands for Coordinating. I might have to look this up, actually. It's a in-school program where they focus on improving health. It's Coordinated Approach to Child Health. That was pretty popular within the schools and public health district. And then another thing to possibly explore, the bike giveaway, maybe doing that before Bike to School Day so more people can participate. All right. Enforcement, there's the police presence request, which it can only be a request. It's only based on availability. It's usually best when the police are there at the beginning of the school year, which I think is the case at a lot of elementary schools, just to keep everyone aware that, you know, they should be following the rules. No cell phones in school zones, which we do have on the signs now, the school speed limit, 20 signs, that state law. And then some of those traffic circulation changes that I talked about. This is the map that just shows what we had prepared before the new 2014-15 school year to flip the modes. And like I said, they haven't had any real issues since then. And then evaluation, speed study, good to know that that's already another thing already being implemented. Crime data analysis, we looked at this in the plan and listed, we looked at traffic crime or traffic offenses and non-traffic offenses that might relate to walking and security and that type of thing. So there's, you know, that might be something that should just be looked at. We recommend that our plans be updated every 5 years. So maybe it's a 5-year cycle, maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's annual, depending on staff resources or who's going to kind of take that on. And then travel tallies, which are really important to helping us get that mode share, and walkability and bikeability surveys. So, as mentioned at the beginning, the plan is currently open for public comment. There's a 30-day public comment period that lasts through Saturday. It's available online. The best place to go is cuats.org/news, CUUATS. Comments can be sent to me via email, phone, mail, in person. We also have copies. This is the copy that lives at the Regional Planning Commission, and they are at the Dr. Williams Elementary School and Urbana Early Childhood School front desk, main office. And then we are going to the Urbana School Board on Tuesday, October 4th to present this, and then we'll seek endorsement from them. And then, like I said, all of this information, the recommendations, can be used for applying for a Safe Routes to School grant in a future cycle, since we have both infrastructure and non-infrastructure projects. A lot of that non-infrastructure would see Safe Routes to School. So that's what I have.
Thanks, Gabe. That was
Thanks.
that was really informative. Do you all have questions or comments, further discussion?
I was a part of the committee. We talked a little bit about the traffic circulation changes. I think what's interesting to note is initially there was some resistance there, I think, and then it's one of those that once you get past that initial flush, and then it seems to be working really well.
Yeah,
I think.
definitely. Yeah, like I said, I haven't heard any comments. I'll be at Dr. Williams for Walk to School Day, October 5th, and I've been there every year, so I usually run into parents that I've seen at this planning process and other things, and yeah, I've heard that it's worked fine. And I'll also say, sorry about the parents, that they were good to work with. I think the PTA and parents are interested, and maybe this is a school that doesn't always get attention, but they care about their neighborhood and their kids' safety, and it's a big population too in the school. I think it's got the most of any elementary or second highest. So the principal has a lot to deal with. So, yeah.
Why did that circulation change work? What did you learn from it, or what
I
did you
think
know? Or
the biggest factor was that South Circle Drive is a lot longer with the early childhood school there now. So all the cars can stack there, and they're not on the street.
Yeah, and I think when they were to the west there, the loop, what was happening was, they could actually cross. Sometimes kids would cross two lanes of traffic flow
Yeah.
to get through there.
Yeah, it was definitely more dangerous at the Washington and Kinch because you had the cars coming in and leaving, and the kids walking and biking through that intersection, and you pretty much have to cross two legs. Most of them do. So, yeah, it reduced all those conflicts.
Gabe, do they have early dismissal for walkers and bikers?
That's a good question.
That's something we should have
Mhm.
put in there, was
I
to
th-
recommend that they do that, but I think they may do
I
it
think they do
already.
too. I think we proposed that, and they said that they did that or they
Okay.
started to, but I'll double check.
Okay.
yesterday, one of the more interesting ideas we heard was in Kansas. Because we were talking about the carbon monoxide levels and how that changes test scores and all this information. And what one of the schools came to the conclusion was they dropped the students off in buses a couple blocks away from school. And the students walked in, and they thought the students were going to just be up in arms about it, and it was going to be awful. And the students loved it. And then they thought, well, when it rains, they're going to hate it. The students loved it. Snowed, all of it. I mean, it was the craziest thing. I mean, as a person who walks, I, of course, am like, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, but I was frankly just really surprised when I was hearing, I was like, I really wouldn't have expected that result. But that's just something that I think is interesting. I mean, I'm sure, too, if you don't have to walk through, again, like cars, 4 lanes of cars and things like that. Like if you can drop them in an interesting place where they have an interesting walk to school, then that also changes things. But I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Dr. Williams actually did a bus drop-off at the church, but on Kent Street for one of the walk to school days a couple, 2 or 3 years ago. But the year after they did that, and the principal, led that charge and made it happen, but the population grew a lot, so she wanted to do it, but it's just there were too many kids to manage. So that is something they have in mind, but they have challenges too. But that is good, yeah, when we can do that. Definitely.
Anything else? This is the only one.
This is the only one.
Yes. And So that's something I think that would be very helpful, because when Stratton did their plan, they got a grant as a result. And it makes a difference if you have a plan in place that you have done the work to identify the issues, you've got documentation for your recommendations, and it makes a much stronger case when you put in a grant application. There are a couple of ways to do it. You can do it by school. You can also do it by school district. The problem, of course, is to have this level of detail for each school would be a significant challenge, because this school, I believe it was a $10,000 project.
Yeah,
But for some of the other
approximately.
schools, it has been more to undertake the plan. So I would say you're looking at between $10,000 and $15,000 per school to produce this level of a plan. Of course, you can do a plan that's not this thorough. That's entirely possible. But the process of getting input and keeping things moving in the same direction, you really need staff that have time dedicated to doing that, because it's a challenging process to keep things rolling.
And we also applied for other public health funding to do plans for 3 other elementaries that would have been a 3-year project, but we weren't successful in that. I don't think that a funding source is available anymore, but it was something that public health was interested in working with us, and we try to look for opportunities when we can to do things like this.
Well, thank you so much for coming and providing that information, and if you'll hang around, and we will move to announcements. And I will let you start then with with the announcement of the app that you have developed, and perhaps we can get the camera to look your direction, and you can show us one of the seat covers you're handing out.
Yes. So, I can start by passing the file around to you guys. Oh yeah, I've go up like several times. I think I got one to you today, but I'm gonna pass. Some of you don't have them, some of you do, I know.
And explain the app and why we're doing it.
Yeah. All right. I don't know where the camera's looking, but this is the bike seat cover. Oh. So this project, the app, it's a mobile app called Bike Moves Illinois. It's available on Android and iOS. We got a grant from IDOT to develop a bicycle tracking app that we are piloting in Champaign-Urbana. And some people may ask, well, there are a lot of bicycle tracking apps out there. What's the difference? What makes this special or unique? The idea is the information comes to the Regional Planning Commission, and then it's shared with our local partners, including the City of Urbana. It's not for commercial use. It's really intended to improve bicycling in the community. So the app itself, when you open it, it brings you to a map. It's a Google Map base map. It has the existing facilities in the community that comes from our inventory, and then existing bike parking, and another feature I'm forgetting. But it's a start, pause, stop type of feature, and then it'll ask what type of trip you were taking. That matches up to our travel demand model, so it just really asks, like, are you coming from home or work or shopping, so we can see where people are going for different trips and on different routes. And then there's also a issue reporting feature. So if there's a low-hanging tree branch or a pothole or something, or even, I think we have maybe like scary dogs on there, things that you can report that make your ride unpleasant. That's information we'll pass to the cities so that they're aware of it. If we get a lot of that information, then maybe that's something that can be addressed faster, whatever the case may be. But we really, on the route side, it'll help us to see the more people we get using the app, then we can see where if there's particular streets or paths that more people are using, or if they're avoiding, maybe even if they have a bike lane but people aren't using them, then we can see what the usage is out there. So with that in mind, we are going to be at Light the Night on Thursday night at both stations, giving these away to everyone and waiting in line before they get to their lights. And we are also doing a gift card drawing at the end of the month. So we have two $50 Amazon gift cards, and someone from each station will be selected. And people who have already downloaded the app will also be eligible for the drawing. So anyone who not only downloads the app, but we have a newsletter. If you just go to our website, it's on the cover, but it is http://bikemoves.me. We have a place for people to enter their email address, and we have a newsletter we send out once a week at the most, not extremely often where you'll get spammed or anything. But everyone who's who gives us their email will be eligible for the gift prize or the gift card raffle. So please download and tell your friends and let us know. I mean, we've been testing it and continuing to develop it this year. We actually worked with the University of Illinois computer science class with students to get this developed, but we had testers, but test it out yourself, and if you have issues, let us know. Go to the website.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
So wait, so it's the Urbana-Champaign area, or where else are you having it?
Yeah, Champaign County, but mainly
All right.
Urbana,
Champaign County,
Savoy.
that's it. So just Champaign County. And then does it just track where I don't have to put in my route? It's going to follow, it's going to...
Right, as long as you turn on the play, it'll track where you're going.
Awesome.
Yeah. And really, you can use it anywhere in the state, but you're only going to have information here in Champaign County, so, yeah.
Okay. Lily, would you like to share with us what's going to happen at Light the Night?
Yeah, absolutely. So Thursday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., 2 locations on campus, one at Alma Mater, Green and Wright Street. The other one is going to be at the Helene Gateway at Illinois and Lincoln. There's going to be 1,090 bike light sets, Planet Bike Blinky sets that will be installed by over 60 plus volunteers. That it's open to anybody with a bicycle without lights who shows up. Please come. Yeah. And then probably give you a Bike at Illinois flyer if you show up to my
And a
station.
seat cover.
And a seat cover.
Thanks. Well, this is a big event that both the cities, the university, and Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District have been funding and partnering with the Bike Project and Champaign County Bikes to try and improve safety on campus. We get several thousand new students in every year. They can see well at night because they're young. They wear black. They ride around on their bikes without lights, and we can't see them. So we're trying to make sure they know that they legally are required to have a front light, and it's a really good idea to have a rear light. And that is, it's an educational event in addition to trying to get more lights on bikes. I had a few announcements here, and then I'll let other people run through announcements. We have Walk and Roll to School Day. It's October 5th. I would like to invite all of the members of this committee to join us, and you can pick a school. In fact, I need to set up a volunteer sign-up location. I think that would be a good idea for people to be able to do that. We invite University of Illinois student athletes to come, elected officials, parents, guardians, everybody. We have all of the elementary schools in Urbana that participate, and it can be a lot of fun. So keep that in mind. It's an international event, and the effort is to try and draw attention to the challenges our students face in walking and biking to school, and also to encourage and educate them on the benefits of it. The other activity coming up is we have a youth instructor workshop scheduled October 15th. You can become certified as someone to be a youth instructor through the League of American Bicyclists in a 3.5 to 4 hour workshop. Lily is going to assist with that. We're going to run it from 8 to 12 at Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District. And we're hoping to bring in some of the new PE teachers for the Urbana elementary schools. Goal of our program is to have all the children in the schools learn bicycling someday as a regular part of a PE curriculum. So we're hoping someday we'll be able to provide equipment and training so that that can be something that kids learn in school. The other thing I wanted to let you all know is that we are moving forward with a pilot volunteer snow removal program, and we've been working with the school district to set that up. We've identified high priority routes by using the Safe Routes to School routes, high usage bus routes and stops, and then the information provided in the sidewalk inventory study that was done in terms of high priority locations. And we will be recruiting volunteers to adopt segments, blocks of sidewalk to do snow removal. We will not be volunteering to shovel snow inside of the area where property owners are legally required to remove snow. And so those boundaries are not ones that we want to be working on, since they need to do that themselves. But if there's someone who has a mobility issue that the city's aware of, then we could take a look at that. We'll be setting up a web page on the CU Safe Routes to School project website, and working through the details of that with the school district and trying to launch it in early December. I took a look at when the earliest snow, measurable snow is, our highest snow months, which are December, January, and February, and decided that we really should try and get it up and running in early December if possible. One glitch we're running into, though, of course, is that if we were going to recruit university students, they're gone for a longer time period over winter break. So that's something we'll have to keep in mind for January, because they come back later by a couple of weeks, I think, than the public schools. But we're excited about that program getting started, and hoping it'll be a successful one. And then somebody was going to sort of fill us in on some of what they saw at the Bike Summit. Gosh, I would say the majority of people here tonight made it to the Bike Summit, and it was a good event. It was very exciting. Annie alluded to it, but the Secretary of Transportation for Illinois showed up, and he said that they are moving from the traditional model that they have been operating under to one that is building transportation system for people, and to move people and not cars, and that's music to our ears. So I'll let anybody else add in anything about the Bike Summit they would like to share.
I was incredibly blown away by IDOT. I mean, I was seriously blown away by IDOT. I saw the IDOT presentation. They have is it the first time ever, a full-time person dedicated to bike and pedestrian infrastructure, I believe. He gave a great presentation. And then it's Randy Blankenfield. Do I have the right name there? Blankenhorn. Don't confuse me. Randy, I'm terrible with names. Randy Blankenhorn gave a talk, and it was just like everything that, it was just incredible. I mean, it was just one of those things where you just couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, are you really just are you saying this stuff to be nice, or are you serious? And he did bring up funding at the end. He's like, I just don't have a lot of money. He's like, I have all these projects I want to fund, and I want to fund all of them, and I just don't have a lot of money, so we really have to talk about how to do that. And so that was that was the one thing for me, was just IDOT. That's fantastic news. It's really fantastic news, because you know this. You can't keep doing things like this just out of nickels and dimes. Like, it's like if we really want to do a real mode shift here and make it so people are comfortable on our roadways on bikes, we do need money for that. Like paint. Like, I mean, seriously, splotches of green paint. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I think what was also interesting, I mean, he acknowledged that locals like us have been doing it on our own. We have been actually the leaders out there, and then IDOT is now starting to come along with bicycle and pedestrian issues. So,
Well, and I got to hang around for the Ride Illinois board meeting afterwards, and one of the things people said was, this is the time to be involved in bicycling. Like, they really, we are going places. The culture's changing, and it's time to do this. So everybody join Ride Illinois.
I was also really interested in, I'm always looking for partners. What are partners? How can we bring in more people? And to me, one thing I know when I read the bike plan was it would be great if BPAC had someone from Carl, because they are one of our largest employers. And that makes perfect sense, because health and wellness, public health, that's where a lot of funding's coming for now, for these initiatives and for getting people to think differently and how they move around places. So that was like one partner group that I thought was really important to have us all pay attention to. And I know Cynthia did that with the open streets. You had health and wellness people involved when you wanted to do the open streets event.
Yes, we have a 501c3 organization called Healthy Champaign County, whose goals are to reduce obesity and increase activity in the community. We have a website, and you can take a look. That's the group that worked really hard on coordinating to try and bring the Open Streets event here. We keep applying for grant funding to carry out some of our goals, because we have very specific goals, many of which we coordinated with the Regional Planning Commission in terms of the long-range transportation plan goals and other goals in the community. So there's a lot of overlap in what we're trying to accomplish. They're very specific, and we just need some funding to do some of the programming. Public health has been a huge partner in the community, and they would do more if they had funding.
And so then the other partners that I thought might be interesting would be like police officers, like bicycle police officers, because people talked a lot about enforcement and what that means and getting proper training for people. And then the thing that seems very lacking and that people are really trying to find movement towards is education in our schools and bikes in our schools. There's a lot of Illinois schools where they won't even allow bike racks. They say we won't put a bike rack in. And so a lot of people talked about their frustration, because Cynthia gave 2 wonderful presentations, and one of them was about schools and bikes and trying to get, how do we do that? So those were sort of just that's just kind of what I picked up on.
Anybody else want to share anything that they thought was really important that they learned, or new people they're connecting with?
I did think it was very interesting and important, the conversation that a gentleman from Ohio had about trails and trail funding. The idea of building a trail that brings in people, goes through small towns, and connects to something is something that really is an important long-range goal. And it's hard sometimes when you have a lot of small projects to think about these big goals, but it's so special when you have something like that in your state or county. So it was really interesting to hear some of the economic development case studies that he had and some of the numbers that he presented. One number that he presented, for every $1 spent on bicycle facilities and trails, he would get back $2.94. And this was in a rural area in Ohio, where finding bicycle facility dollars is very hard, and I'm sure finding a lot of economic development can be pretty challenging. So it's a very fascinating. There are even bigger numbers in that presentation, and of course my notes aren't in front of me about that, but I think it's a very important thing to look at for Champaign County and for Urbana is where can you go if you're not from here and you want to come here? Where can you go? What can you see? What can you do? And what trails provide for not just the people you know, but also future generations. Very interesting.
There were a couple interesting church-based initiatives, I think. One of them was taking people who are not mobile out on their trail, the Constitution Trail, having volunteer rides available for
I
people who
love
would
that.
otherwise not get that opportunity to get out. Another one I heard that I didn't get the details on it all was Earn a Bike program in a prison. And churches may be working to help make that possible. And the prisoners work on, constructing a bike from the parts, like a bike project. And then when they leave the prison, they have a means of transportation. And so that was an interesting one also. And there was a little bit of discussion about biking out of necessity as opposed to biking as a choice. Not a lot at this particular conference. Maybe we'll see more next year.
And Craig, you were
I went to the equity session. I thought that was interesting. As somebody that designs bicycle facilities and roadways, we've seen a shift of a focus on the older and aging population. But I have to say, and being a male, I didn't. It kind of opened my eyes a little bit about, say, with female bicyclists, and maybe a little bit more of a concern or cautious approach with cycling. So that was good to hear some of that and understand. And I immediately thought of the Bradley bike lanes and a little bit more of the buffer there, and I'm 47, so I guess I didn't think of. I guess I feel like women are equal and not that issue, but I thought there were some takeaways there. That was kind of interesting to me, just to be aware as a designer. So.
Yep. Okay. The other we had on here also. Are there any other announcements before we move on to future topics? Yes.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Mine's more of a future.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to announce really fast, October 12th, if you can, I know it's during the workday, but if we're always looking for volunteers for the bicycle census. So that's October 12th, and it's from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's where we count every district of the university and parked bicycles, and we come up with a pretty big number usually. And so it's important to have that really big number. But also we try to keep that data digitized, and the idea is hopefully soon we'll be able to open up that data to everybody in the community and anybody who wants it. So it'll also be an interesting crowd support project. So keep that in mind and everything. So if you want to be a part of that project, that's something that I'll be posting more about on Facebook and other social media forums, and get a volunteer sign-up sheet going for that. But that should be a really fun event. And so if you can take the morning off or take an hour out of your day, it's a pretty good event to get numbers and count on.
I guess we would be remiss if we didn't also remind everyone this Saturday is the Kickapoo Rail Trail Ride. That's an important fundraiser for our trails, since we're talking about our trails and how much we want to have that one open. And you can find information about that on their website or on Facebook. If you Google Kickapoo Rail Trail, you should be able to find it and get information about how to pre-register, how much it costs, where to go, how many different routes, all that sort of stuff. So, future topics. Go ahead, Audrey.
I just had a question, status check on, is our commission fully populated, or are we short individuals? Yeah.
So we need to recruit one or two. We need two new members. So if anybody out there is interested, there is a form on the city's website that you can fill out. And then they take a look at that, and it goes through the process. It does have to be approved by the mayor. And then you are appointed to serve a 2-year term. So please take a look at that. We would welcome applicants. We would especially welcome male applicants.
We also, we've always had, in my memory, we've always had a representative from the elementary schools.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. One
Yes.
one of them would be dedicated to the elementary or the school
One
district.
would be the school district,
Yeah,
yes. So if
yeah.
you work for the school district, we are especially interested in having you.
Yeah. You know, but your point about the male, I didn't think about that. But I mean, I'm
Yeah.
saying I'm the only
Yeah.
male member tonight, so
I was.
Yeah. And Annie brought up maybe a representative from Carl or some health organization.
hmm right.
It would also be nice to have someone from one of our minority populations, from
Sure.
one of our ethnic populations. We've got a very diverse community, but that's not reflected in the demographics of this group. So we would love to have somebody who's interested in biking for different reasons than us, that we need that additional perspective. A future topic I would like to have a discussion about at some point, Annie alluded to it, the pedestrian crossings on Lincoln. I don't know whether staff has looked at that. I feel like the lighting isn't, for me, the older person whose night vision is not as good as it used to be. I don't feel like I can see people well there at night. And I know from experience, both as a motorist and as a bicyclist and pedestrian, motorists are not yielding to people in the crosswalk there, and they appear to not realize that they're supposed to. And, you know, people complain about the signs that we have on green, but those signs make a difference in people's complying with state law. They get the message when it says stop for pedestrians and crosswalks. So I don't know what the solution is there, but it worries me that I feel like I don't see people well, and then there is an issue with compliance. And I know, yes, there are pedestrians that don't use the crosswalk and dart across, but I more often see motorists not stopping than I see pedestrians darting on the roadway along that section of road.
Can you tell me what specific locations?
Well, when I drive down Lincoln, it feels to me that the street lights don't reflect on a number of the crosswalks, and I could drive down and note which ones.
Okay.
But I think part of it is they're the really tall poles for roadway lighting, and that is kind of a heavy pedestrian area. And I know along Green Street they have different kinds of lights, and I know we don't want anything as bright as they have on Green, because that's practically like daylight.
Right.
over
You
there.
you talking south of south of Nevada, by chance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the good news, and that may be a plant for what I was going to talk about.
Oh,
but,
good.
Yeah.
But we are in the data collection phase of looking at the pedestrian crossings from the Lincoln Avenue from Pennsylvania up to Nevada.
Oh, good.
There have been some issues, particularly at Iowa and Ohio, those two locations. So
Yep, you're right.
we're collecting data, and our goal then is to study those to try to figure out how to improve that. There was actually, I think, a planning, like some grad students that had looked at some suggestions.
Oh, good.
But right now we're in the data collection phase there, and we're also in the data collection phase up on North Lincoln
Oh, yes.
at the two apartment complexes,
Yes.
basically north and south of Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that there's some issues there. that one is also heavily populated with students that get off the buses there, and
Yes.
we have a little bit faster speeds and more volume up there as far as cars. So we're looking at those two sets
Oh, good.
as far as data collection, and we want to try to figure out a solution to make that safer for pedestrians
good.
through those two zones.
I have a little bit to add on that too. Greg, we should get together. But the university, we are going to be updating a bicycle path coming up to Lincoln, and so that's something that we'd like to look into, taking the bicycle and pedestrian traffic straight into near an intersection at Lincoln. But that's something that we're still in the design phases of doing. Right now we're talking to a couple of different stakeholders on the university side, but right now we know that we've got a lot of bicycle and pedestrian traffic that's kind of misplaced in some of those areas. So we're looking into rerouting that traffic to particularly Lincoln and Iowa. So,
Okay.
but Nevada is affected by that too as well.
So it may be a while for a
Okay.
future topic, but
Okay.
it is something that's on engineering's radar
Oh, good.
that we're working on.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
that-
have
that's
talked to
great.
an Urbana police officer about the two incidences that happened in 1 week. The one before you, Annie, was actually a road rage incident where the driver pulled over and continued to lecture the pedestrian, screaming at the pedestrian about, "I don't have to stop for you." The pedestrian, I think fairly sarcastically, with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, called the police and said, "Well, let's ask him." And the car driver said, "Sure," and then thought better of it while they were waiting. I did talk to an officer, an investigator about this, and he actually was very surprised to hear that this is an issue, and he was also very surprised to look into it and ask plenty of people for advice on what is the pedestrian rules of the road. So I've been sharing information with him, but I will reach out to him, and when we do want to have a discussion about this, I'll invite him to the meeting to at least listen or talk if he wants to.
Right now, what I do is it's Iowa I'm talking about, right? What I do is I bike up there and then I just go left and hop on the sidewalk. So I'm really obvious that I want to cross the street. I'm not trying to cross the street, So I bike up on the sidewalk and then I'm trying to get across that street. And I do the same on Vine because that's my route. And so I'll bike down. I don't know what that street is. It's Vine by the grade school.
Washington? Or
It's not Washington. It's that. Yeah, Farallon. Yeah, so I'll bike down Farallon and then I go hop up on the sidewalk. So I'm in the pedestrian crosswalk, like I'm trying to cross the street.
Well, I get off the bike too.
Yeah.
And walk so that
Yeah.
I'm a pedestrian. That's the neat thing about bikes.
yes.
Yeah, but it's like, but it's more just it's more like what I don't like about it is I'm on my bike and I need to go across an entire lane of traffic to get up on the sidewalk. I don't think it's really the best. It's not a great idea what I'm doing. Technically I should probably stop my bike, dismount it, hop over to the right-hand side of the road, look left, look right, then walk across the road, then walk a half a block to the pedestrian crosswalk. But no one's going to do that. So I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm just saying that's what I do. So, yeah.
I do think that motorists are under the impression that the law is that pedestrians are supposed to wait until there are no cars coming.
Yes.
They really do not understand that if the pedestrian is already in the crosswalk, they're supposed to stop.
Yeah.
They think if you could see
That's a
them,
problem.
you weren't supposed to go out into the crosswalk, and that is not the case. And so I think that there is a lack of understanding in the community, and perhaps it's time for a refresher for everyone, and law enforcement can assist with that.
That's why I was originally talking to law enforcement, is I thought this was a good area for a targeted campaign,
Yep.
because there does seem to be a disconnect between that, and I think it is something that
Yes.
would be an interesting topic. But I know the university police very well, and they are always open to targeted campaigns, but I don't know what the process is for Urbana police, so that's something that we're still talking to them about.
I've seen a big improvement
Well,
since it was first installed.
Yeah.
There's much greater compliance.
There is
I
more
agree.
compliance. You're absolutely right. Well, I for years have tried to get a what is called a pedestrian sting campaign done, and that involves using mostly law enforcement as decoy pedestrians. You set up the location so that, you know, it's very obvious what it's really an education campaign because they advertise it weeks in advance. They say this is where we're going to be doing it. They put the pedestrian in a big giant vest, or some places have even put them in cartoon costumes, and they have cones and police cars out there, and so you can see there's something going on. And it's surprisingly still people will try and run over the pedestrian right in front of the police officers. When they do this in Chicago, it gets a lot of media coverage. The problem locally, Lily, that I ran into was they said that in order to do that, they would have to pay overtime to officers because it's an additional activity, and that they didn't have funding for that. And I don't know whether the campus police, I never talked to them directly about it, but that
They budget
perhaps-
time for targeted
yeah,
campaigns.
maybe they could undertake that because it's a city of
don't-
Urbana street, but they certainly could make some sort of
I don't know if they'd
arrangement.
be willing to do that on Urbana Street, but I can ask.
Okay.
And is there any proof that that actually changes behavior?
It is an educational event. It's an effort to make people aware of what the law is and what they are supposed to be doing. It's not meant to. You would not get a ticket from the police officer unless you're belligerent. It is not. You know, you would probably get a warning if you said, "Oh gosh, I didn't really understand the law." It's the people who get irate and argue with the officer that I suspect are the only ones getting tickets. But I think it would be especially effective if we could do something similar to that around schools at the beginning of the school year, for example. But I know for the Urbana Police Department, they have been fairly short on officers. And so if we could figure out some way for them to partner with the campus police so that we could look at doing something like that, they, in combination with, you know, other efforts that are underway, it's one of the E's, education and enforcement, that I think that all of those things together do have a synergy that creates a better community culture.
And I mean, it's just basically you don't want to put in a stop sign. I mean, it's more, you know, I mean, because you could put in a four-way stop sign at all these places, but it's awful when you're like, I mean, it's not.
Yeah, well, you know, and it's right on the border of the university district, and you know, to the east is more of a residential.
Right.
To the west is the campus. You know, we do have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit through there. You know, my personal opinion is that may be something that we look at, is reducing the speed
limit.
limit through there too. We have, though, on the east side, you have a lot of particularly campus, or I'd say sororities and things like that. So you get
Right.
this.
A lot of traffic.
Right, and we did do a road diet through that zone a couple of years ago, and then there's new signage, but the lighting is something, we will be looking at
That
specifically.
road diet was huge in improving safety on that street.
Right.
It was very courageous. That was our first road diet.
Yes, yeah. So I have a possible topic. You know, Charlie's taken, and Jeff Yockey have taken a lead on this CU bike map, but I wondered if we could ask them to come, and because this meeting is televised, to show the map, bring it up on the screen, kind of
Sure.
educate the public about it and where they can get the map, because it's a pretty good map that's out there. It's fairly compact. So if, yeah, too. Yeah.
I also love that idea too. As we have so many new people in this community, route planning is not something that's intuitive to a lot of new cyclists. So a lot of people will get a bicycle, and then the first thing they do is take it on the same road they would drive, and it never,
And then
rarely turns out
and then
very
they
well.
never bicycle again.
They never bicycle again. And I've seen this
I
in
have
social
too.
media forums. I get these comments from
Yeah.
people saying, "Well, I had a horrible time driving down my bicycle down University." Well, that happens. But did you know there was a really great route that you could have taken? So bike map education and distribution, especially on a televised, it might reach a crowd that we're not currently reaching for this. I also have a future topic too as well. We're working on a ton of things at the university, tons and tons and tons. Too many to list. But one thing that we are coming to midpoint, we have been installing new bicycle racks all over campus. And I think by the time we get to the next month, we'll be at about 75 to 80% completion of that project. And it's going to be over 300 inverted U-loops throughout campus in targeted high priority areas. So, which it will provide about over 600 bicycle parking spaces. So that's something that I could present on if you guys wanted to hear about that. It's a lot of bike racks. Pretty cool.
I think bike parking as a bigger topic would be of interest. We have a bike corral in downtown Urbana, which I think is fabulous. And I know that in some communities they have programs where businesses can request that the parking space in front of their business be converted to a bike corral. So I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to have a bigger discussion about how do we make bike parking part of the way in which using a bicycle becomes a convenient form of transportation, so you don't have to go look for a bike parking spot as part of your trip, because car parking is usually pretty obvious. We've done a good job with that in downtown. I think we've been working on making the wayfinding better, but I think that's something we could do more on. Speaking of that, the other thing that we haven't talked about that I know you're getting ready to do is a wayfinding plan at some point, and so I don't know where we are with that.
Isn't it amazing, Gabe, what comes up? We just actually had an initial scoping meeting today. So
okay.
we're retaining Regional Plan Commission, who has done our master plan, to do the initial wayfinding plan. City staff doesn't have the time to get or expertise to get into that, so Gabe will be and Rita will be taking the lead on that. So we're doing the initial scoping right now. The idea would be to come up with the scope. I've got some funding set aside for this, and then say the plan would be vetted through probably a fairly extensive public process that also the BPAC would be involved in, and then the implementation phase would fall back to city staff to see what we could do. And one of the things that we talked about today was if we can get something signs up next year. That's the goal. Some low hanging fruit project. So that's kind of where we're sitting. So and that does tie in. We actually talked about bike parking, tying that in as a destination. So.
And isn't the park district doing like a green loop or a green line or something? And would it be coordinated with that whole?
Yeah.
It essentially connects all of our parks, and it's a combined our trails working with on city sharrows or bike lanes or things like that, but just kind of way of getting everything connected.
That's great as a person who goes camping, and I go into I'll take a trail, like Lily said, and then I will go spend money in their downtown, or I'll do whatever. What's exciting about the Kickapoo Trails, we're going to have that, and then people will connect, and then they'll just be like, wow, I could do this Emerald Loop, or I could go downtown, or I could, that's pretty cool.
Well, and we were talking, it's actually pretty exciting. It's like the icing on the cake. We have the infrastructure side of it that we're trying to build out, but this is the visible kind of other sort of bonus that can really make a system pop and have some and it can be the visual component to the system. So that's why when we were talking internally with staff, and I had a staff member do some research, but we didn't really feel that we had the time to really dedicate and do it in a proper form. So, we're lucky to have Gabe and Rita, who know this master plan. They know our system well, And we didn't want to do something that was sort of rushed and then not well thought out, and maybe signs go up and then, oh gee, we wish
No,
we
you
would
don't
have done
need that.
something different. And there are logos to be potentially created. You know, there's you know, what goes on the signs themselves are really restricted according to the national manual that we use to say 3 destinations each sign, so you don't want to have 10 signs on there, you know, and
That's right.
it has to be thought out. And what better opportunity than to work with the people that have done such a great job really setting everything up as far as the planning in Champaign, or I mean Urbana and Champaign, I guess.
Yes, I have been working as the project manager for a wayfinding plan in Peoria through Alta Planning and Design. And it has been a very interesting process because they did pass a plan, but they have a lot of off-road trails, which is different than what we have here. But trying to set up a system so that as you expand your on-road system, that you can easily tie that in through the way you have the guidelines set up. We're sort of doing it the other way. We'll have more of an on-road system that we want to then expand to an off-road system as it builds out. But I think we should perhaps talk with the Park District. It might provide some additional help and we want to certainly coordinate with them in setting up the system, try and set the logo and the branding of it in such a way that there's some consistency across the system, but allows for you to know that you're on a different, you know, you're in the Park District's system, off-road system at this point, rather than the city's.
I'm smiling because we talked about that too. So. But and then I think it's important to coordinate with the university and
Yes.
Champaign as well.
Yes,
We want one
absolutely.
at Illinois and Lincoln, says you can go to Carl Park.
Yeah, well, connectivity is so important, you know, in our communities. I mean, most people don't, if they're not from here, they don't know
They
where
don't know how
the
to get
boundary
around.
line is.
Right.
University Transportation is very interested in getting students off campus and in Urbana.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that
Ways
was
of
another thing
making
we
it
talked about. You
easier.
know, it would be good if students knew that they could go to downtown Urbana.
Absolutely.
It's quite easy to get to. When
Yes,
we
indeed.
build the MCOR project, there'll be dedicated facilities there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it's an exciting thing.
Well, we have plenty to do then. We've got lots of future topics.
Collecting them.
Well, if no one has any other future topics, we can move for adjournment if somebody would like to do that.
Make a motion.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
All right.
Hi.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.